welcome to a brand new season of Extreme Reloading. This is season number 9, and this season we're going to be talking about reloading from bare essentials to extreme reloading. In every one of our episodes, we're going to start by talking about literally the bare essentials. In other words, what do I need to do, maybe as a new reloader, a brand new reloader, what do I need to do to make sure that I have safe and reliable ammo? And then we're going to run it all the way through to the extremes. Well, for some of us who are on the more experienced, many years under our belt type of reloader, segments of those episodes will also be very appropriate and applicable to you. We're going to be talking about now, if we really want to crank it up a notch, extreme, what do I do at this step, or what can I do at this step? So in this first episode, we are going to be talking about the bare essentials of what do I need to get started in reloading. And so we're going to focus our attention on the equipment. Some of the stuff that you're seeing right around me right here that's necessary, with the assumption that you're absolutely brand new to reloading and literally just getting started. By the way, throughout all of these episodes, we're going to be talking about and really focusing on two separate cartridges. On the pistol side or handgun side of the world, we're going to be focusing on the 9mm Luger. And on the rifle side of the world, we're going to be focusing on the 5.56 or 2.23. Not exactly the same. We'll talk more about that throughout the season. And then there are going to be certain segments, certain parts where we're going to also look at the ubiquitous 308 Winchester, because sometimes there's some good examples to be had by those larger centerfire rifle cartridges. But let's start talking about equipment. And what we're seeing here, one of the very first things that you absolutely need is a press. This is a reloading press. It is called a single stage reloading press. It's called that because every process or task stage that we do is or requires some change in the tooling that I'm using on that press. For getting started, it's absolutely fantastic. I've been using this since literally the 1980s. Same exact press, the very first press that I bought, and it still served me well. So if you're wondering, boy, can reloading really ever pay off for me? Wow, it can really pay off for you. You're going to save some money by reloading or hand loading. I don't get too much into quantifying how much money I've saved because I also enjoy hand loading. I try to make sure that I can craft the best ammo I possibly can for my particular rifles or handguns. And so I'm not going to really talk much about that. Now, another type of press that you'll find is the progressive press. And some folks think, well, if I'm going to get into it, I may as well really get into it. Go whole hog right away. Well, I will say you don't need it. A couple of reasons for that. You don't even know if you're going to enjoy reloading, hand loading. And those presses, the progressive presses, are far more complicated to set up and get them working correctly, and far, far more expensive. Plus, those progressive presses actually can detract from your ability to really craft the precision ammo. There are certain stages in that progressive press process where, like for instance, charging the case with powder. You're going to make the assumption that it's charging that case equally with the powder. The process that I use, I meticulously weigh every single load that I put in, and I know for a fact, because they're on the scale, that they are precise to a tenth of a grain. In some cases, I can up that precision to a hundredth or a couple hundredths of a grain. We'll talk about that in more detail when we get into charging or adding the powder charge. But this is a progressive press. This is a single stage press, not terribly expensive, but it's going to do the job for you. And a press like this is called the RCBS Reloader Special 2. I don't think they even make that anymore, but this can do every handgun round I might want to reload, all the way up to, and I've actually loaded 416 Rigby in this thing as well. It can do all of that stuff for us. Not a big problem. You're going to need some sort of a bench to mount this to, and you want this to be as secured as possible. It does not wiggle. That is good. We want that just for our own, I guess, adding to some of that precision that we're looking for. We don't want things moving around too much, or really at all, as we're doing our reloading. Now, this press, as we use it, or get ready to use it, right now as it is, there's nothing really I can do with it other than crank the handle, I guess. That's about it. So you're also going to need a set of dies. And my example here is a set of Hornady dies. This set here is for 223 Remington, and it will also allow us to load 5.56. Again, more about that later on in this season of extreme reloading. This is a 2-die set, rifles, but what we call bottleneck rifle cartridges, centerfire rifle cartridges, will always require a 2-die set. One of those dies is called our full-length FL sizing die, and this one looks like this. This is the Hornady die. And the second die is your bullet seating die. I painted the top of this one red. This other, I actually have two of them. The other one that I have here has a little bit of green on it. That's just some of my internal stuff that I do. I've got these preset for some vastly different bullets, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to do anything like that. Now, there's other things in this box that we should talk about. One of these things that I put into this box is this die that you'll buy separately, and this is a trim die. Bare essentials, you need some way to trim the length of those cases that have expanded to or grown in length to beyond what we call the SAMI spec. But those cases need to fit to spec. They can't be too long. If they're too long, they probably won't chamber, and you're going to have a big mess when you go out to the range. You'll be very frustrated. You won't be able to shoot. So we use a trim die. The most simple approach to this is a trim die, and there's a trim die we can buy for every one of the cartridges that we're going to load. Now, you might have a trim die for your 5.56, and as far as the 9mm is concerned, you know what? I've never trimmed one of those. If I find one that is too long as I test it, I just throw it at this point because it is so rare you don't need to trim, but you need to check it. Okay, so you need to check it. Good question. How do I measure or make all these measurements? Well, you know, this is one place where I think there's a little bit of an additional investment. So a lot of those kits that you might get might give you a rather cheap way of measuring those cases. And what we'd like to have is a decent digital, I like a digital caliper. This one isn't, it's inexpensive, maybe 20, 30 bucks. And I got this from Harbor Freight some years ago. And it has worked actually quite well. This is it right here. Makes those measurements, those case length measurements, pretty darn easily. Now, another way that you can make those case length measurements faster than using a digital caliper is to use a gauge like this. This is a Lyman gauge, and it works so many different popular calibers. You just slide that case in there, and if it fits in the designated slot, it is within SAMI spec. If it's too long, well, you need to trim it. This is good, but this is in addition to that digital caliper. Sometimes I call that a micrometer, but officially and correctly, that's a caliper. Anyway, this is in addition to a caliper. You'll also need that caliper to measure combined overall length, coal or cartridge overall length. That is important to make sure that you get your recipe correct. Now, all of these dies are going to thread into the press. And you know, this is a set of Hornady dies, and this is an RCBS press. Will it fit? Absolutely. Nothing to it. Super simple. So don't think that, oh, I'm going to buy an RCBS press, now I got to buy RCBS dies. Gee, those Hornady dies, they sort of look good, but I better not buy it. They may not work. Oh, of course not. It will work. Don't worry about that, and don't get hoodwinked by someone trying to sell you something like that. The other thing is, going to the extremes, we can get even better dies. And how are they better? How are they better? Well, one way in which a die is better, one versus another, is in the precision in which they are machined at the factory. How close they really are to those SAMI specs and those tolerances, especially when we talk about a full-length sizing die. So if we step it up a notch and we start going extreme, we might want to, and I have done this, I have numerous dies from Redding, and they'll have a bushing insert inside of them. Don't worry about that right now. We'll talk about that when we talk about resizing our cases. And we can go even more extreme than that. I recently picked up a set of Wilson resizing dies, full-length resizing dies. And you'll see sometimes in America through Creedmoor Sports, the German Treble or Tribal dies available also. Not available in too many calibers or cartridges, but it is available for some of the more common or popular cartridges out there. But when we're just getting started, the bare essentials, RCBS dies will work fantastic for you. Of course, there's a range of different quality of RCBS dies. Hornady will work just fine for you. Even the Lee dies, which are kind of on the most simple budget side of the world, value dies, they will work also. And they'll all work in this same RCBS press. Now, once I thread in that resizing die and I'm ready to start my sizing process, I can't put the case in here, right here. It won't fit. I also need to purchase a shell holder. It's called a shell holder. And there are a bunch of different shell holders out there. This happens to be an RCBS number 10 shell holder that happens to work for 5.56, 223. It'll work for a bunch of different cartridges, but it will not work for 9mm. You're going to need another one. So I have this little holder right here that it works pretty well if you have a lot of different cartridges that you reload for. If you only reload for a couple, you don't even need this, not at all. I used to, when I didn't have that many cartridges, I would just pop the shell holder right inside the box right here, and I'd be all set. We're also going to need, as I said, a way to trim those cases. We're going to test the length of those cases after we resize. And if they are too long, we'll need to unthread this, place in that trim die, and just using a mill type file or a bastard type of file. Mill type file, going to do a little bit finer work for you. Normally it'll do the job sort of like a precision surgeon. If you have a lot of trimming to do, you might want to go to a flat bastard type of file. It's going to take off a lot of material quickly, and you can work it actually in both directions. Mill type file, remember, only one direction at a time. But you can do that. You don't have to have a fancy trimming machine or anything like that. as the Bare Essentials. I do have a fancy trimming machine. That's on the extreme side, so don't worry about it quite yet. So now I've got cases that have been resized. I've trimmed them back. When we do the trimming, those case mouths they won't look too good, and they really are not too good. So I'm going to have some way for me to kind of clean those things up. And what I use, Bare Essentials again, is this chamfer and deburr tool. I'll demonstrate how we use that again later on in the season. Very inexpensive tool, couple bucks. Maybe not that cheap nowadays, but it'll do certainly take care of a lot of cases with this little tool right here. Then when that is finished, you're going to have some shavings, brass shavings that drop down inside of that case, and you're going to want to clean that up. Again, just a little hand tool. This happens again to be RCBS. You're just going to clean up the mouth of that case. And as far as Bare Essentials are concerned, that kind of takes care of it. We then move into the process of actually reloading. And one of the first things that we're going to need to do there is to put a new primer into that case. The full-length resizing process, by the way, kicked out the spent primer. That's called decapping. And now we need to put in a fresh primer. So we'll take a new primer, and using this same single stage press right here, I use this Positive Ram priming unit, also by RCBS. Thread this thing into the press. Right, a couple of pieces to this. I'll demo this later on in the season. And this will allow me to do a pretty good job of seating those primers. Again, it'll be absolutely safe. It'll be absolutely reliable. There are ways to more precisely seat those primers with extreme consistency. This is not really the tool for it, but again, Bare Essentials, it will absolutely get the job done. Once we have done that, then it's time to charge those cases with powder. And there are several ways we can do that. We can use a volumetric powder dump. This is a little tool, boom, 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 and it comes out. That is okay. Sometimes your kit will come with that. Not a problem at all. Another way to do it is to use a scale. I've always preferred a scale, trying to get, pretty consistent as possible, powder charges from one case to another, to another, to another. And when I first started, I used this basic balance beam type of scale. I have kept this thing over the years, and it still works. It will always work. I have also purchased over the years now 3 different electronic scales. My first electronic scale worked just fine. It did better, I think, on all my testing. It did better, more consistent than the balance beam scale. And then a new scale, electronic scale system came out, so I got rid of the old one and bought the new one. And then even another, newer, better, faster electronic scale came out, and I bought that one, got rid of and sold the old one. Now again, I've still kept my balance beam scale because even if I don't have electricity, I can still reload. Give me something to do when we have a blackout, I guess. I can still reload with my balance beam scale. Yes, I am certain that the electronic scales are, number one, far faster, more precise, more consistent. But a balance beam scale, if it comes with your kit, whatever comes with your kit, which is a great way to get into hand loading, it will certainly do the trick. Just pay attention to what you're doing. Again, we're going to cover the details later on in this season of extreme reloading. Then, we've got a case that has a primer in it. It has a powder charge. It is charged. Now we need to top it all off with a bullet? Well, we need to then again change the die that is in our single stage press with a bullet seating die, right? So I will unscrew this one. I will still be using the same shell holder, and I'll screw down into it my bullet seating die, and then I'll seat bullets. Right, so the bare essentials of reloading is really a fairly short list. You're going to need these things that we talked about, or I talked about, to get started with reloading. I have been reloading, as I alluded to, since the 1980s, and since that time, I have loaded thousands and thousands of rounds, and I'll tell you what, I have never had a misfire. I've never had a dud. Every one of my rounds has been safe, reliable to shoot, and I have crafted some pretty extreme loads over the years. Now, extreme, I don't mean I'm doing crazy stuff by blending my own powders. Oh my gosh, I hear of people doing that. Don't do that. That is not extreme, it's insane, okay? Something like that. We will do some pretty extreme stuff to seek the ultimate in precision. In other words, every bullet is the same velocity and punches through the same hole in the paper. Have I ever been able to do that? No. I've never been able to do that, more than a couple of rounds, right? I have had the same exact velocity for 3 rounds in a row. That was really cool to see, but they didn't hit in the same hole downrange. I have had bullets pass through pretty much the exact same hole downrange at 100, even 200 yards, even pretty much at 350 yards, but you can still see a little bit of deviation. But it's fun. It's fun to chase this goal out there in reloading, and boy, it can certainly keep a person busy, and it can become kind of a rabbit hole to go down if we're not too careful. So sometimes I've got to come up for air out of my rabbit hole and kind of readjust, let's say. But that gets us started. I hope you tune in for this entire season of Extreme Reloading, where we take it from bare essentials to the extreme. And in our next episode, we are going to focus on components, talking about powder, primers, and bullets. How do we make those choices? What's a good choice? What's a good selection? Hope you join in then. Thanks for watching.